like to create my own vision of this. Are you taking it? Oh my God, no, I look horrible. Don't do that today.
We'll fix it, don't worry.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll doctor it up.
Thanks to Photoshop.
Well, let me ask you actually something else along the lines. Is Feo short for Feodora?
That's correct.
Yes, it's a Balkan's name or a Russian name.
Absolutely. How do you know?
Because I used to work for someone who came from a Bulgarian family.
Yeah, I don't know about the Bulgarian part, but I know that it comes from Old Greek, and it came into Russian language. And my grandma, my dad's mother, her family used to marry some kind of triangle from Russia to Denmark, Sweden, and Germany. It's a very old German family. So this is how the name came into her family, and it was her name. And I was supposed to be a boy, and then I ended up, coming out and being a girl, and it was just the best name my mom could come up with because she loved it. And then she was called I, my grandma, because it was the first word I spoke, and she stroked my hand, and I said I for like this. So she was called I, and I was called Fia.
Feodora is a very pretty name. I've always liked that.
There's a great chocolate brand in Germany, Feodora, and they're just lovely. You should taste them.
Oh, I definitely will. Well, let me ask you a question about the film, and we'll start on the film. We can always come back to some history, but the opening is very intriguing to me. I thought it was an excellent opening. And there are two questions. One is, why do you start with the end? But also, it is not the end. It's the penultimate scene of the end. So that's a very interesting narrative device. Can you talk about why you did that?
I did that because what is going on in the film is sometimes not so surprising. It's something, if you know those dynamics, you kind of would figure that this might be the next step in the story.
When
so
you say the dynamics, since other people
like
might
the
not have seen
dynamics
the
about
film.
honor killings, about those dynamics in families having those issues. And I was not so much interested in the what, but in the how.
How they go about arriving at this place.
What is going on in those, with those dynamics? What's going on in, psychologically with this family, in those characters? How are they torn between whatever it is they are torn between? And so it was more the how. So I just thought it would be a good structure to have, like, how do you call this?
Parentheses.
Parentheses, if you make a parentheses. And it just fitted it for me.
But now, it's interesting, I still want to follow up with this, because when you say, you still haven't explained why you think that parentheses, which is, it's a great narrative device to begin with an end. I think that's always can be there are many psychological reasons to take the viewer or the reader through that end. And then I was very intrigued when I realized it wasn't actually the end scene, it was the penultimate end scene. So you have this in your mind all the time. I don't know, should we give away what the scene is or not?
As long as you don't give away the end.
You think it's going to be, yes, you think it's going to be, well, it's about an honor killing, so obviously you think the killing is going to take place in this particular way. So why did you feel that it needed a parentheses? Was that a way of softening the blows of the horror of the story, or was it a way of pounding it harder? What was it?
It was probably more a way of pounding it harder, and as I said before, of making my point that for me it's about the how. And another thing is that I think when you make a film, when you write a script, or when you paint a picture, or you sculpt, you sculpt something, you have certain pictures, certain atmospheres. You just start out with something, and there was one particular image and moment that was in my head very early on, which inspired me in the writing of the whole script, and that's just something that's part of the end and the beginning. So that was something why I wanted to do it as well. So you do it intuitively in a way.
Absolutely. So you did what is not atypical, as you say, in the art process. If you have one single something, and from that you span it. Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah. I also want to ask you why you, at least in the English translation, the title is Why We Leave.
When we leave.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What's what I meant? When we leave.
But why we leave is an interesting
why we
question
leave
as well.
That's true. We're desperate. When we leave, and I wondered why
Is that the German Is that an accurate
Is that
translation,
an accurate
of
translation?
the title?
When we leave.
Yes.
No, because in German it's called Die Fremde, which would literally translate into the stranger. But this doesn't grasp all those layers that you cover in the German language with Die Fremde. It just would grasp one meaning of the word. So I thought it's just not correct, because it's not just about the stranger. And Die Fremde in German can mean a lot of things. It means if you migrate someplace, you go into Die Fremde. This is the kind of like strange land you go. You feel fremd if you don't feel seen, if you don't feel protected, if you don't feel accepted. So it had a lot to do with all those different layers of the story, and the spine also on a social level, on a like the macrocosmos of a society versus the microcosmos of family. So Die Fremde got it all for me, and then just taking that and translating to The Stranger just didn't do it for me. So we were thinking together with World Sales about how could we name it, what would be an appropriate name, and When We Leave was just seemed the best one to grasp it, get most out of it.
That's interesting in itself. My question is why we? Why focus on that word, we, when we leave? Because that is a very unusual word to use in a title, and it's an unusual word to use in this title of this particular, because part of the message of the film, the impact of the film, is that it is very shockingly not us. In other words, it's these are customs out there, and also it's a very shocking custom. Honor, quote unquote, there's a real quote for you. Honor killing is a beyond barbaric. I mean, you can't even words can't describe it. So the we is very interesting. Why did you choose that?
Because it is about so many people leaving something. It's each member of the family would have had a chance to leave, to overcome, to step over their shadow, to step over their principle, and overcome things just as much as I think that this majority of a society, for example, like in Germany, could overcome certain things in a way to treat minorities in a different way and make it a little bit easier for them to arrive, and make it therefore a little bit easier to grow and to really arrive and to let go of structures that are just really overcome and very archetypal and very archaic in a way, very, very old. So I think it's a we thing on so many different levels, and I think reaching out to one another is always a we thing. I mean, I can reach out to you, but if you don't take the hand, it's not a we, it's a you or an I.
So you're saying also then that in the film, because it doesn't really come across in the film in that sense, but you're talking about, in a sense, German culpability of keeping outsiders within a certain community, keeping them outside of being able to assimilate, integrate. Therefore, they perpetuate these inward-looking archaic customs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it just doesn't make it easier to let go of those mechanisms.
That makes sense.
This is a story of a young woman who, I don't know if it's an arranged marriage or it's an arranged marriage, and she goes back to Turkey with her husband, has a child, the husband is abusive, it's not working, and she comes back to, is it Berlin?
That's correct.
She goes back to Berlin to the subculture there, which is the Turkish community, which is very insular in a way, and very much the customs of the old traditional Turkish Muslim customs. And she is not welcomed back by her father because of the shame that she's bringing to the family. And everyone in the family is affected by her choice to come home. Is that just the narrative line? Did I get anything wrong there?
No, it's just that it's one part of a Turkish community living in Germany.
Okay, it's one part of
very
it.
Conservative.
But this is a very conservative, traditional Muslim, patriarchal situation with the father at the head, and what troubles me, not in a negative way about the film, but through the whole film, and which I also identified with, was her so much wanting her family's support, and at every turn, it was turned away from her, and she has her child with her, and even to the point where the men in the family, well, her older brother and her father and her mother all thinks that the child should be returned to her abusive husband. Now, that dynamic of wanting the family's acceptance is universal.
Exactly.
You know, this is a story about the Turkish community, but I can think of a number of other instances where that whatever happens in that family dynamic, she has left and come back, but she wants to stay in the family dynamic.
Absolutely.
And that to me is what this core of the story is about, and why it is not just a film about honor killing. It's about being trapped in tradition, even when you rebel.
Absolutely. Thank you, because this has been a core, and this is why
So-
This is why I wanted to tell this story. You know, it's like you choose the world in which you set those feelings and those emotions and those dynamics. But
So it's
I
not a
wanted to keep
politically
them-
correct film.
Well, you know, politically correct films.
I know.
It's not what you know.
Wait, I'd like to jump in here and ask you why are you saying that?
Well, because I think that when you describe it as a film about honor killing, it's certain things come to mind that are real. And what I think why this film is so powerful is this human story of the daughter. It could be the prodigal son. It is the prodigal daughter, in a way, coming home and wanting her family, who does love her.
Absolutely.
You know,
And I think you can see that.
Yes,
You know?
and yet, no matter how she's rejected, she doesn't leave again. You know, she goes away, but she comes back, and so therefore she is complicit in some ways in continuing the tradition which she's trying to reject. Is that a way to talk about it?
Because also she can't overcome what is so inherent to all of us, which is like the strongest bonds we have, our family. Those are the strongest bonds that kind of like, what's the English word, that just, you know, determine the way we function, you know. And I think it's a universal thing that we need the loyalty and the love of our family, regardless if we function in the way that they think we should function. I think it's about unconditional love. It's about being able to live a self-determined life, you know, having a profession you want to have, or live in a way you would like to live without losing the love of your family. And I think that's just something we all know to a certain extent, you know, all different kinds and shadows and grades of gray, you know.
We had an American
So it's-
writer named Thomas Wolfe who says you can't go home again. A very long book, and in a sense, and particularly in our adolescence collectively, when we're reading these kinds of books, it's a message to young people about, you know, not to be romantic. Once you're outside, it changes everything. And the thing that also troubled me in a confrontational way, which is why your film works so well for me, is the child becomes secondary. It's almost a pawn in the family, but that child is exposed to all of the stress and contradictions and violence, psychic violence, emotional violence that goes on in this family. And how old is it? Maybe 4, 3, 4? 5. So, you know, and he loves his mother. His mother is who he knows, but the child becomes more of a pawn that she won't give up, but she's exposing to all of this early, awful family situation. Why did you have it that way?
What's pawn?
They're all struggling over the child,
Yeah.
a little object
Yeah.
that they all want.
Yeah.
You know, and she's the mother, and she's definitely not going to give up the child.
Absolutely.
And the father says you have to give the child to the husband. So that's what is done. It's his child that the mother is not seen as her child.
But that's a problem, you see, because this is what's going on often in those dynamics, is that, and she would have had it probably, or it could have been a lot easier for her if the child would have been a daughter, for example, because then a daughter would have been just a horror as the mom is one. But once it's a boy, you know, there's a great need to get back the boy and the son and to raise him in the way you want to raise him. And the question was why is the child in the story, or why is the child the pawn, right?
Pawn,
Because
as
pawn,
in a chess,
pawn.
little chess piece. The little
Uh-huh.
teeniest chess piece is a pawn.
Oh, a pawn.
The thing you just
Okay.
use. A
Yeah.
little soldier is a pawn
As a
in an
pawn.
army,
Okay,
in a war,
yeah.
that kind of thing.
I think the child is the most important. It's the biggest treasure for everybody, portrayed in a story in a way. And the child is the future. Nobody wants to give up on the future. And in a way, what goes on is, what's trying to be preserved. Kind of the system kills itself. It eats up itself. I mean, you try to preserve certain tradition or archaic tradition for the future generation. But if these are dynamics that are not healthy, you kill the future, basically.
Very interesting. Do you, can you talk a little bit about, it seemed to me that you use silence in a very interesting way throughout the film. There's dialogue, of course, but there's a lot of use of silence. My memory is certainly the opening is silent, which is very, very effective. And then she travels, and there's a lot of silence there, and silence throughout. And it seemed to me that you used it as a structuring device. Can you talk about that?
Well, first of all, I don't like films where everything's just in the dialogue. I mean, like us now, most of the time we're communicating in a non-verbal way. And I think it's about, looks and moments, and this is where the real stuff is going on, I think. And I think it's important to have that in a film, just to get closer to the characters and, kind of be with them and offer to the viewer a look into the soul of people. And show their, how much they are torn in the dynamics told in the film. And I also think, just as you said, it's a good device to structure. So it's been for various reasons, and I think it's just I need it for rhythm. It's a rhythm thing. I mean, it's just something that it's those moments in between that I find so interesting, and that trigger me when I watch films and what I watch out in conversations. These moments in between.
There's another structuring device that's visual, seems to me, which is the use of black. But it's not a fade out. It's just it's almost like the scene just turns, becomes black, and then cuts. Hitchcock used black wonderfully like that, but yours are
I don't
shorter.
like too many fade outs.
No. These aren't fade outs. These are almost frames.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
or bars between.
Exactly.
So do you want to talk about that, because it's again what seems to me what you're saying is you're trying to use sort of an unconscious draw to draw us in to a way of identifying or sympathizing or understanding. So these black visuals, what did you?
Because it's like I wanted it to be like that's so hard for me to say in English in a way that if you don't
Just
I try. I wanted it to be like I had my felt structure, which is you go on a roller coaster, and then at the end you just like do like this.
That's your plot structure.
That's my plot
right.
structure. There's different levels, of course, because there's this Greek tragedy thing to it, and the catharsis to it on another level. But I wanted to be able to open rooms, emotional rooms and windows, and I just think that you dive into something and you're there for a moment, and then you come back and you there's the next moment, and you pulse. It's like a heartbeat. You're there and you're gone, and you're there and you're gone. And it's also, of course, I'm telling a story about a family, so it's not it's not just from one perspective, not just from one point of view. So it seemed important for me to be with you and then be with another character. Also, of course, there is this main perspective, which is Umay, of course, the main protagonist. But it was important to me that you feel close to all the other characters and kind of like feel the family structure. Did this make any sense in English? Cause
No, it makes
it's very
perfect
hard
sense.
to say
You've
it in English for
described
me
it very
being
well.
not a native speaker. So
I think was that something that you. How did you conceive of that? Both of those structuring devices. Was there something that influenced you particularly, or you thought this through very much ahead of time, or it evolved as you were making the film, or evolved in the editing process?
I think no, it evolved after I did just a very long time of research, and I mean, of course, you do research in a very factual way. You have to know the world you're portraying. So it took me like 2 years to do that, and then at the same time you work on a different level. You start creating, which you just it's like you get in all the stuff, and it just breathes within yourself, and you get a feeling for. So it's I think it's always a mixture between a very clear analytical way of structuring things, and also an intuitive way. You just have a feeling how it has to work, and this is what I put in a script. So I had a very particular feeling about how the structure and the rhythm should be and would be, and I think that's always a mixture between thinking about it in a very analytical way and combining that with just what I would call an intuition. I mean, you of course, and then you realize, why did I do that? Is this working? And then you go back and you question it and you try other things, and you just, I don't know, that's so hard to explain. It's just like painting. I mean, it's like you kind of like you have a feeling for it.
I think you've explained it very well. Go ahead.
I was quite taken with the performances. Your lead actor, who plays the central character, Uma, was so believable. But I was also quite taken with the mother. And the mother, I kept thinking of Iranian kinds of films, or neo-realism in Italy, because so much of what she did was not in words. It was in her face, and the emotions, the conflict that you could see she was going through. She loved her daughter, but she had to honor her husband. Her husband was the head of the family, and and it was about a grandchild also. And the economy of the script in those moments really worked cinematically. And I wondered how you cast that part, the mother, and how you spoke with the actor, because her role, more than anyone else, is nonverbal.
I cast her by looking at a tremendous amount of Turkish films for a long time, and then narrowed it down to, let's say, it was, I think, like 12 very, very, I think, talented actresses from Turkey I wanted to meet. So I flew to Istanbul, and I met with them, and I also met with Daria, and we sat down and talked about my vision of the story and of the film, and I realized that she was just somebody I could connect with really well. And then I left the script. I had a Turkish translation of the German written script, and then she read it until the next day, and then we met again and sat down and we talked about her part and about the script, and she just wanted to do the film so much. I mean, she's one of those women you can't silence her. I mean, she's a very political person, and she's a very intuitive person, and she's a great actress, and
So she's a well-known actress in Turkey?
She's well-known in art house films in Turkey. She's not like the big commercial star, but people, being interested in cinema know her for a long time.
So the Iranian films, though, are they any influence on you?
I couldn't really name specific influences. I think it's all. I'm always having a hard time when people ask me, like, what did influence you, or what is your favorite film, or because it's just such a broad thing. It's mine. What did influence me, for example, definitely what I can single out is like Mike Leigh and his work, and the way he's working with actors, or people. A lot of those directors are working on a Meisner-based technique in some way. That's just something. That's the approach that works best for me. So, and Daria is just somebody. I mean, she's very much in the moment. She's a not bullshit person, and she has a very concrete feeling about a fake and a true moment. And working with her is just a pleasure, because I directed her often in a way where I would just tell her a story to convey a feeling or an atmosphere. Just as much as you do basic directing work, we have very accurate, actions and wantings and needs and all that kind of stuff. But that's not something. I mean, that's basic for an actor like her.
You said she was very political, and and your lead actor has said in the Q&As I've seen her that this subject is very, very important to her as a Turkish woman, and yet a lot of Turkish people are not going to want you to tell this story, and not particularly will not want you, an outsider, to tell this story. And I wonder how you steel yourself and explain yourself about why you feel that you can tell this story.
I think you can tell any story, I wouldn't say as an artist, but basically as a person trying to communicate something, as long as you know what you're talking about. So I don't have to justify anything. I can just honestly say, this is my amount of research, this is my amount of shared reality by people who have been caught up in those dynamics, women and men, families and young women in Turkey, in Germany. This is where I met people over a long period of time, and I think if as long as you know what you tell, you have to at least know. You have to at least know what the hell you're talking about if you set things in a certain setting. But that's as much as explaining as I would do, because as you said in the beginning, I think it's about a universal core that, having a French journalist speaking to me in Créteil like 2 weeks ago, and after we finished the interview and she turned off the microphone and she said, I want to thank you for this film so much because and she was my age, she was like probably in the end of her 30s, and she said, I have a very, very Catholic dad, and I have 2 young sons, and I got married pretty young, and I wanted to leave my husband, and I actually did leave my husband with my 2 sons, and ever since my father's not talking to me, and I just saw my father on screen every time I looked up there, and it just, all those feelings came up. So, and I think that's just one of many stories where you see it's not, it's not about a specific culture, and it's not only about a specific religion or cultural background. It's just something that we all know. And I mean, there are honor killings, for example, if you bring it down to an honor killing level in Catholic Romania, so it's also not a thing you can kind of like boil down to an Islamic context at all, because honor killings are just so much older. Those dynamics are so much older than all our big religions are, and so I don't think I haven't had the need to explain myself in Turkey insofar as that Turkey was the first country that bought the film one day before we had the world premiere at the Berlinale, which made me extremely happy because of what you asked. And we were taken on by the Istanbul Film Festival, and it was just received really well, and people are very touched. And I can just tell that those viewers in Germany who bring in this background react very emotional, because I think there's a culture of dealing in a very honest and open way with emotions.
There is a culture around the world, you mean?
Yeah, especially in the Turkish culture. They're not afraid of emotions, It's also the language is very, it's full of proverbs, full of pictures, full of feelings, full of pictures for feelings. It's just very rich. It's emotionally very, very rich. And so there's a tradition of showing very openly how you feel in a way also. And that's something that communicates if they see it on screen. And that's, if you look at Turkish films, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just, they're not afraid of seeing emotion on screen, which sometimes, for example, with certain, let's say, German films or mid-European films, there's just another way of dealing with emotion. It's just you sometimes even have the impression people are scared of evoking emotion, even certain, when you're very formal and you have a specific way of dealing things in a cinematic way that is very, boiled down to a formalism. This is not what When We Leave is, so it's probably, from the style, it's pretty close to what they like to watch.
We have to wrap up because they need to go off quickly, evidently. Do you know Turkish then? You learned it did you spend time in Turkey?
I spent time in Turkey, but I learned Turkish actually a lot of months before we started shooting, each hour, one day in the morning. And a private teacher came. I know, of course, because parts of my family speak Turkish. So, but it was it wasn't good enough to really have like a decent conversation. So I took on lessons, and then I learned my script by heart, and I worked on a script with somebody who was really, really good at translating. He's like one of the best simultaneously. Do you say simultaneous translators? Simultaneous translators in Germany, and he's doing a lot of book travels with Orhan Pamuk, or if Erdogan comes to Germany, like the political level, he would translate for them. And he also comes from theater, interestingly enough, so he has a really great way of dealing with language, and he helped me translate those dialogue lines in Turkish, so that it's really on the spot and not just, some kind of literal translation. And of course, you know every single word of your script before you will start working, which is necessary, and then you see what you adjust or what comes up in the rehearsal. But I learned a lot through the film, obviously, and I thought it was very enriching to be able to direct in two languages that are so different. And to also set exactly, work on those points where I say, here's the use of Turkish language and here is the use of German language, because this is an issue in families. I mean, it's like in Germany, it's a little bit like this, that often children talk to their parents in Turkish while they talk with their siblings in German. And it just says something when you use Turkish or when you use German.
Yes, it's very interesting.
It tells a story, so it's said on purpose.
It's
basically.
also very interesting that you have the ability. It's very unusual for the director to be able to be hands-on at the level of the subtitles, and also to have
we're
to
a small
understand.
company.
No,
so,
but I mean, to understand
the
the nuances of language and how it represents the lusciousness of a language, or its dryness, or its use of syntax is so untranslatable, but so unbelievable crucial.
It's
so interesting to hear you talk about it.
It's so crucial to each character and to the overall setting of a story. I mean, the use of language is one of the most important things, I think, when you create. I mean, it's crucial if you create a character. I mean, how does he or she use language, and which accent is it, and what's the syntax, and what's the rhythm, and all this. It just tells a lot.
Not just only in a quote a foreign language, but also just to have that ear for how any kind of character speaks in any language, to convey what is really going on.
Yeah, and I think
when you see that in a script.
That's what you look for in a script when you act. When you look at has there been thinking about this? Is this a script writer who has a feeling for this? And it's just something I was used to and I often missed. And it lacked this quality, and it's something you bring on board then yourself. But obviously, it's a nice thing to have a ground there and then work from there. But I just think it's important.
Very. I'll leave you with the last question.
Well, I'm sorry we can't talk more today. I hope we can in the future.
I'll be back.
Because of the whole question of multiculturalism and how the law works around trying to respect these different cultures when a crime happens. And in this particular crime, it's usually a female whose life is lost. Not always, but usually. And I also wanted to talk to you about the role of shame in the family structure at a very early age and how that plays out as the children grow up. Because understanding her desire to repeatedly go back to a place of pain is one of the to me, the most powerful themes in your film, and the one that confronts the audience. And but we can't do it today.
We have to do it over the phone.
Yeah, we can do it over the phone.
Yes,
I'd love to.
Yes, that'd be great.
But I just wanted
No,
to...
you can see where Julia's nodding. I've got to.
No, it's fine.
I just wanted to, this is a film festival, and we see lots of different films and lots of challenging films, and then the ones that bubble up and stay with you past the 2 hours that you're with because you're off doing something else, the one that you take home and think about and you tell your friends about, that to me is a successful festival film, and this, and your film is one of those films. So it's I hope that the people that listen to this will have the opportunity to see this film and talk about it, because it is not an entertainment. It's a very provocative piece that is not simple. Is that the way you wanted to leave the audience?
If you guys, leave, let people leave with question marks and the urge or the need to talk, to keep up a dialogue, because I think that's just what's needed.
When is it going to open here in New York? Do you know?
Well, help us open it.
You don't have a distributor.
They're in talks, but no deal yet sealed.
I
so,
think with the prize, you'll get a deal. I'm
It
sure.
would be great. It would
Yeah.
be just great. I mean, I would love to have to film here.
Of course,
And
and it
come
will.
back.
I'm sure it will. Actually, I'm sure.
Was
it
there
will.
any television money in your production budget?
Yeah, if you find in do you know about German finance structure? Yeah, you do, probably. It's so great to talk to you because we're actually talking about film and not only about politics. Which is great. You almost can't do it without some television money in there. I mean, you have to have those state fund monies, and then you have to have a certain amount of television broadcasting stations being in there in order to be able to get those fund monies. I mean, there are systems for small budgeted films where you can go without TV money, but it just makes sense to have it. We had wonderful partners. I mean, we just I feel so fortunate because they were the best partners I could have had, I think.
Have you ever had tea with Margarita von Trotta?
If I met her?
Have you had tea with her and talked movies?
No, I never had tea with her, but I would love to. Yeah, we had.
She's a brilliant.
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
yeah. No,
Did you-
I would love to have tea. Maybe we should have all of us should
Oh, I
have
wish.
tea
That'd be great.
on your beautiful
That
terrace
would be
here.
great. That would be great. Is she someone whose work has influenced you?
I mean, absolutely. Also, the sense that she's a woman, and it's just not an awful lot of women filmmakers in the world. It's likely becoming more and more, but it's not too many.
There are actually quite a few. It's just they're very, very, very unknown.
Yeah,
It's quite amazing.
and
You
I
can.
would like to know why. Do you think this is?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
I think it's gender politics for sure.
Mm.
Absolutely. I mean, Catherine Bigelow is a kind of example. I mean, in the sense that she has made blockbuster films for years that are very talented and
Absolutely.
totally fabulous, but certainly was not the name that anyone knew until this Academy Award. But I mean, you can walk by film posters and it's a woman director, and
It's just that they are not
even
known
Boys
to-
Don't Cry, which was
Absolutely.
talked about for a
Absolutely.
decade. How many
Right.
people could name the director? Very few. And then she
Kimberly
did
Pierce.
Kimberly Pierce, but she did Stop Loss, which was another Iraq film
Exactly.
around
I've never seen
different
this
subject.
one, but
no,
yeah, I would
nobody
love
had
to-
died
yeah.
of death.
I'm not even sure if it was released in Germany. I'm not sure.
But that's part of it's a strange,
It's a strange
politics
thing.
are politics are politics, and I think it doesn't. It's not a matter of crying about it specifically, but it's certainly if people will favor what they feel more comfortable with. I think that is often the case.
And one of the strengths of this
Absolutely, yeah.
one of the strengths of this year's Tribeca Film Festival, and I could go on and on about the films I don't like, but there are so many women directors with the best films at the festival. Snap, your films, the documentaries,
Monica
Auber.
David.
I mean, really challenging pieces of work, and that's what not only has bubbled up above all the others, and whatever I want to say about Tribeca Film Festival, it probably has had better representation of women film directors than, say, Sundance this year had, or the New York Film Festival. So, I mean, I think it's really pretty significant, and the quality of the work, and how different the films are. That they're that old saying, well, are they women directors or are they directors that are women? Well, they're both.
Exactly, and I mean, I remember Mike Haas being asked a couple of times, like, was it different to work with a woman? And I think it's just, and luckily he said, well, that's kind of a weird question, because, or was it better or was it worse? I mean, it's like, it depends on people. Why are those questions still coming up? I think it's a little bit ridiculous at the end of the day, because it's like, what's it like to be directed by you or by you? I mean, that would be a question, because we are, but
What also?
why
I mean,
do we
there's
define
certain-
it still by gender? It's not about how loud I can scream on set, right?
It's also,
So-
but it's there are certain groups that have been experienced extreme prejudice that no one would dare say. What was it like to be directed by a Jew? No one would say
Yeah,
that, and
right.
no one would say what was
Yeah.
it like to be
Yeah,
directed by a gay man. That would
or
be
by
a little
Spike
bit.
Lee, because
Right,
whatever,
that, and so there's certain things you can say and there's certain things you can't say and that kind of thing. But I would like to ask you that question though, which I think is a very interesting question that's open-ended, which is, do you think a woman brings a different something different to a given project? In this case, let's say a film. Do you think there's a different perspective, a different eye, certain things show up that would, or emphasized, or are done in different ways?
know, because I don't know all the women and the men on the planet, so I would find it hard to generalize. I just think we are very, how do you say, endurable. I mean, I think
Durable.
durable. I mean, we have
Strong.
like strong, and our ability to
Well-
to just stick it through.
That's
It's
true.
just, you know, very very big, I think. But I would never dare to say this is something men don't have. I mean, so I think, and I wouldn't say there's like men who look at emotions in a different way or deal with because there's just
Think
too
of
many
it.
examples of this negating this. You know, there's just a lot of not a lot, but there are some male directors who absolutely are able to tell female characters in a very sensitive way, I think, and portray and really portray women and honor women and create parts that are full-bodied, three-dimensional, and not just instruments in conveying whatever story it is or male character, which is then the lead. So I think there's men who can do that as well. So I think it's hard to say it's different.
I think the
It's
question
different.
of
I wouldn't say
violence-
it's better or it's just it might it is.
I mean
probably
different. I don't mean better or worse.
Yeah, it
I
probably
just
is
mean
different.
different.
Yeah,
I just mean
yeah.
different.
I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
the question of violence, though, and how violence is used by women, when the moment requires, when the narrative requires violence, I think there is a difference with the way a woman director, at least in my experience, approaches violence and the way many men, and the man who doesn't approach it in the traditional way is unusual. That would stand out, you know.
In a way, how you show it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and I think that there
Yeah, I
are,
agree
and this
with
is
you.
not
Yeah.
so much, I don't want to call it gender politics, but I think it's sensibility. You know, I think when a man telling the story in your movie, I think would have told it differently. I really do. I think to appreciate how that mother feels about her child and how she feels about her family. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that the fact that when I looked and realized it was a woman that directed it, it made sense to me. If it had been a man and it was done in the same beautiful way that your film is done, I don't think I would have thought about it that much. I would have accepted it, but it confirmed to me, and I, you know, it's hard to walk through this discussion because it doesn't mean that one is better than the other.
It's just different.
But it's different,
And I also think like since you know you choose to tell a specific story in a specific way, which is inherent to how you can and want to tell the story. So obviously, if you write scripts for yourself and it's not something that comes to you, but in general, filmmaking is just a very, very, very personal thing. So it's inherent in the whole system, if you think of it that way, that you could feel it's done by a woman because it's a very personal story at the end of the day. It's, you know, it's how you have those moments with a mom or with a dad, as a woman, as a daughter. So I think it's something that's, in German you would say system inherent or system consistent. Do you say, is there a word like this?
Consistent.
In the whole construction of, you know, of that filmmaking, that making films is personal. So you always do them in a way that are very close to you.
Of course.
And
That's art
why
in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's art. And I think you have explained it actually in many times throughout this conversation in a very interesting and you've explained yourself very well.
Well,
You have.
You know what? You feel a little bit. How do you say? Amputated.
Yeah.
Amputated.
Amputated. Thank you, because I can't use language. I mean, my English is not as good as my German, obviously. So it's just I feel a little bit amputated in not being able to really, you know, nail things on a point. But I'm working on it.
I think you did very well. Anyway, we hope to talk. Should we take a telephone
Yeah,
or
yeah,
email
yeah.
now? Let
Yeah,
me
love
take
you.
a time.
It's been lovely talking to you.
It's been really wonderful
Sorry.
to talk to you,
Thank you.
and congratulations.